Okay, we're live.
Hi!
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Ask Miss Jai Live. My name is Miss Jai. I'm really excited to be here with you today, coming live from Silver Springs?
Silver Springs.
Silver Spring, Maryland.
Yeah, you say it with the S, then they already know you're
Dang it!
Not local.
Not local. So thank you for joining us. Ask Miss Jai Live started as a way to provide healthcare providers and folks who are providing services in our community with information about how to better support and provide services for trans and non-binary people. I'm really excited today to introduce my guest and I will in just a moment. If you're joining us live, go ahead and put a hashtag live in the comments below. If you're catching this on the replay, go ahead and do a hashtag replay and let me know what you think is the most interesting part of our conversation today. We will be focusing the majority of today's conversation around the interview, but if you have questions that come up, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments, and we'll have an opportunity to either respond to those or we'll have an opportunity to respond to them next week. So, I would like to introduce Josie Caballero.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right there. Perfect. That's good.
Josie is the director of the US Trans Survey and Special Projects at the Action Fund at the National Center for Transgender Equality. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. It was exciting. It was like, you're in town. I was like, all right, yeah, come over.
Let's do
it.
So to start us off, would you share a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as was said, I'm Josie Caballero. She, her pronouns. I am a trans woman. Surprise, surprise. But I actually originally grew up in the state of Texas. I was in the Navy, did reactor operations for about 6 years, not 4 years on board the ship, and then 6 years total. And then I did about 10 years of about political activism, working in different campaigns, consulting, all that type of stuff. But that scientific literacy of like reactor science, meaning politics, really made me uniquely qualified to take on the role as the director of the US Transgender Survey, which is very exciting because it really is the biggest data set that we have that really gives us a demographic general idea of what the social outcomes of trans people are. So being able, and what I do in that role is I really coordinate, right? I am coordinating researchers, scientists, funders, making sure that we have organizers, national leaders, influencers like yourself to really get the word out about the survey, but also keep the science and integrity very, very, I guess, keep it sacred. A lot of people don't know this, but the NIH, the National Institute of Health, actually lists the US Trans Survey as the survey of record when it comes to the social outcomes of trans folks. And that is huge because we're not funded by the United States government, at least not yet, when it comes to this work. And it just shows a testament of being able to coordinate these principal investigators working with trans researchers, you know, and that's what I'm really excited about. When I came on this project, one thing that I really wanted to bring forward was that this is a community-led survey by trans people for trans people. Our principal investigators are Black trans men, right? Like we really did pull out all the stops in making sure that the people leading this project look like the people that we're researching, right? And I think that's critical when you're building trust in the community because we're under attack. And so when we have people say, hey, tell us about your lives, we want to make sure it's done in a scientific, sound, ethical way that allows us to share those stories with anonymity to make sure that we can actually tell the world what it looks like to be trans or non-binary in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share a little bit more about what, for folks who might be unfamiliar, what the US Trans Survey is, where kind of how it got started?
Absolutely. It's actually a fun history because, you know, the US Trans Survey in its current form in the reports is known as the 2015 survey, US Trans Survey. But it actually had one previous to that, which was the National Trans Discrimination Survey, or NTDS. That was done in 2008. And that was, led with NCTE and the LGBTQ task force, and they were very happy to get about 8,000 respondents in that survey. Yeah. And that was a big deal back in 2008. And then you have, after the results came in and how much of an impact it actually made on policy, that's when they were like, we got to do this again. And that's where the US Trans Survey came from, because the US Trans Survey doesn't sound like you have to be discriminated to take the survey. Yeah. We love the original versions of things, but when you call it the National Trans Discrimination Survey, it sounds like you have to be trans and be discriminated against to take the survey, which was not the case, never has been the case. And we wanted to make sure with the US Trans Survey, it was just, if you reside in the United States, documented or not, you can take the US Trans Survey. Yeah. And so that's where 2015 happened, where we got about 28,000 respondents, which is historical.
It's so much. It's so wonderful.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And what we were able to glean from that is so much of the things that we already knew, right? We knew that we had in our community a problem with ideation, right? And we knew in our community we had problems with getting access to healthcare, access to public spaces, restrooms, TSA, access to faith communities, things as simple as those things. But there was no research until the 2015 survey really came around and kind of like set the standard, in my opinion. So when the US Trans Survey came out, we did a breakout report for every race and ethnicity. And we also did a breakout report for every single state in the United States as well. And it was a very important step into saying, okay, here you go, here's your specific states, this is what it looks like in your community. So when you're able to advocate for these communities, you can say, here's the data set that says, hey, what you're seeing is necessary because this is what is needed. And really, that's all the survey is, right? The US Trans Survey is a massive demographic survey. To me, it is as close as we can get to a trans census, if you think about it.
Yeah, because the census doesn't collect trans
exactly,
identity. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we have that issue, is that we're not collecting it, we have to collect it ourselves, and we have to display it in the way that brings our humanity forward. And so, the data justice piece, right? Making sure that we are taking those steps. And so I know that this survey, we're coming forward in the 2022, which we will shortly talk about, which is the thing I'm really excited about.
The same.
Yeah. We'll be able to then generate more questions from that. But really, that's where the history of it comes from. And we wanted to do, I guess, a little bit more history. So we wanted to do a survey every 5 years. So 2015 and 2020. Well, everybody knows what happened in 2020.
Yeah,
right? And
it wasn't a great time.
It wasn't a great time, right? The researchers were like, do you really want a data set that may be around for another 5 to 7 years to be a snapshot of the most, upturning event that has happened in our living lives, right? And so we delayed it 2 years to make sure that the data set that we receive from people actually has a really good snapshot of what was it like for the pandemic. Did you get your vaccines? Did you have access to vaccines, right? Why didn't you if you didn't? Like, those are the questions we need to be asking our community, because that's our public safety, that's our health. Yeah. And so we ask questions about that as well in this survey, and that's why there is a delay. We had to do it, but I am excited. Do you want me to go ahead and break the news?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So we are going to be doing our rollout September 12th, and we will be launching in mid-October. So it's exciting. Like, it is happening. Like I have been working on the project since January of last year. So it has been a strong undertaking, getting this all together. So to be able to say it's going to fly out of the nest is a very, very
exciting. Yeah. And I know that you're not working on it alone, but thank you so much for the heavy lift of getting this information forward for us. Because this, like you were mentioning before, these are the largest sets of data we have about our community. I think something that's really shocking is that the research that we have seen up into these points are generally either really small samples, or it's very difficult for us to make any generalizations about our community, which it's hard anyways. But I think that gets to my next question, which is why in your words, why do you think that the US Trans Survey is important? What are some of the things that have happened since the 2015 survey?
Well, a lot has happened. I feel like a whole revolution happened in 5 years, and that's what's so interesting about working in queer research is that time moves so fast for our community, right? Like we think about trans rights 2015, right? And then think 2010, then think 2000, right? Like the leaps and bounds that we have made just in this, short 2 decades that we've been having.
Yeah.
We've seen the emergence of trans humans across the United States. I'm going to shut my doors. My dog is trying to bark. There we go. So we, as a community, I'm sorry, I lost train of thought. Thinking about my dog hearing her come in here.
the last 2 decades.
The last 2 decades, just the amount of change. So one of the things that we are excited about with the new US Trans Survey is that we have a greater amount of humans. Like, let's be honest, more people have come out in the last 5 years than we probably thought in our lifetimes as possible. I just came out personally a little less than 3 years ago, as a 34-year-old, and so basically it took me a long time. But now seeing this emergence of the youth and people coming out, you have a large number of trans people to have a better snapshot of what it is generally. When you were talking about N values, like N values meaning how many people are in the sample, we're going to have a massive sample. Like 28,000 was record breaking, but we already have 30,000 pledges for 2022.
That is so exciting.
Right, yeah. These are people who've promised to say they're going to take the survey when it comes out. So that's not even the people said, I'm just going to wait for it to come out when I take it. So we could see upwards of 65,000 folks take the survey or more. So that is just going to give us so much data at every corner of this country because we're doing U.S. territories. We already have, and this is something that I get really excited about, over 1,100 people above the age of 65 pledged to take the survey.
Wow.
We are going to be able to do an elder survey report.
Ooh, that just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. We're going to be able to know what it looks like to be a trans elder in this country, how they identify, which is really exciting too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, those are the changes that we need to see over time. And so we have more of our Indigenous Native American family members. They're now taking they're now on, as far as the pledge numbers are concerned, about 2.6% of all pledges, which is better than the census numbers in a lot of ways. So we're really excited about that. And so I guess I kind of jump in.
Yeah, please. This is so exciting.
But I know, because I can talk about this stuff all day. But no, so let me talk about some of the changes that we're making, some of the additions. They're not really changes, more than additions in reality. So the US Trans Survey, we really knew that we needed to ask the questions that the country really didn't know. Right, with our partners, with the National Center for Transgender Equality is administering the survey and hosting and doing all the work with the survey. However, we have major partners. We have Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, so BTAC. We have ANCAPIA, which is the largest queer Asian American Pacific Islander organization in the country. And we also have the Trans Latina Coalition as well. So all of these partners that we're working with, including a national council of people who are supporting our priority population groups, we all took a lot of reverence with the survey instrument because we knew the questions that we needed to ask were going to affect people now. To make sure the data is collected now. So what are some of those things? Some of those things are very basic but general. We're dropped the age of 18 to 16 years old. So
that's awesome.
So we're actually going to have a 16 to 17-year-old report too. And those sections are really important when we start asking about sports access, locker room access, bathroom access. We're asking those questions. We're also asking way more questions on, not way more, like there's a large amount, but we are asking them because there isn't any questions about trans people's access to reproductive health.
That's phenomenal.
And we're asking those questions. And we're going to see how many trans people actually have that access to reproductive health or have been given proper instructions. Are they being told by healthcare providers the proper standards of care, and also are they being instructed about what's going to happen with the reproductive care during the process of medical transition if they so choose to take that route. We're also asking questions about more in-depth adoption, foster care, making sure that people have access to that. And if you have, I know if you're trans, take the survey. But if you're trans and have a family, take the survey too, because it really, 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 really needs to understand what your access was to having that family. How did that family come about? What does that family look like? Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of us as trans people, and this is something I'm speaking for, is that we all have different families. Like our family networks are wide, strong, or narrow as they need to be, mm-hmm. right? When it comes to like the way our communities look.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we try to do, and I really appreciate BTAC for this indication, because we changed the language of how we ask questions about family, right? Because we wanted to make sure that it's not, a family isn't a nuclear family. A family could be grandma, grandpa. It doesn't matter what that family is, and allowing that definition to get more broad, but also not lose any of the scientific comparabilities that you need from study to study. Mm-hmm. So having that fine line was actually really, really incredible. We're asking access to cancer screenings.
Oh wow!
So we get to see if a trans feminine person is taking access, is doing trans feminine hormone treatments, then you would be able to know, are they getting breast exams? Like,
yeah.
Is that something that their providers are saying, hey, it's that time that you need to start getting, your breast cancer screenings and things like that. So we're going to have access to that as well. Access to telecommunication. Did you get your healthcare through the telephone? Because COVID kind of uprooted everything as well. So we started asking questions about that. And some of the things that you think that we should have been asking before, but really wasn't around as much 5 years ago, such as access to PrEP. Mm-hmm. Even though PrEP was there, it wasn't as
widespread.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to have access to knowing if people are on PrEP, if they're sexually active, are they doing, all of that type of stuff? Because one of our priority populations are people living with HIV/AIDS, because that's still a problem in our community.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to make sure that we are addressing the needs of those people in the community, right?
Yeah.
Because they need access to healthcare just as much as anybody else, if not more.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that we're excited is being able to ask that. And there are some things that are very small that I like kind of nerd out about. Is
Tell me.
Yeah. So binge drinking. I know we're talking about health, right? So binge drinking historically in most studies nationally ask binge drinking is this many drinks for a male, this many drinks for a female. Okay, great. That doesn't really work out for trans folks. Like what is that? Yeah. Right? Like, so essentially what we had to do is come up with a standard and say, okay, this is what we're going to say is binge drinking. And we had to consult with NIH. We had to talk to a lot of folks to figure out what do we do? And they're like, actually, we've known it's been fucked up for a while. I don't know if I can swear. I'm sorry.
You can swear.
Okay, great.
It's refreshing to hear oh no, we know that this is a problem.
Yeah.
Let's work on it together.
Yeah, exactly. And we got to have being a person in one of those meetings. It's just been so invigorating to be oh my gosh, we're really talking about this in this way that's actually inclusive. And that has been, I think, the biggest delight of all is to see the public outpouring of folks that just want to help get involved in the survey, want to push out the survey. People who aren't even trans, not even trans organizations are hey, can we do this? We had an offer to put there was it was a trans beer owner, and he was making a label, and he wanted to put the link to the US Trans Survey on his beer bottle label. And I was like, wow, that's so nice. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it because we do have an institutional review board, which is a scientific ethics thing. And it's all of a sudden, it's why are people getting messages to take the survey on a beer bottle type stuff?
And what does it mean to take a survey while you're intoxicated?
Yeah. So there's a mountain of ethical violations that are involved in that. But it was really sweet. And we were able to then push them to the National Center for Transgender Equality. And they were able to put it on their bottles. But people are excited about the survey.
Yeah.
Like, they are jazzed up. And we're jazzed up.
Yeah.
You know, people have been poking me all over the place. Josie, when does it come out? When does it come out? When does it come out? I was like, soon. You know, it's like, we're coming out soon. You know, you can't rush science.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and it's something that I've had to learn personally as a human, is that you just sometimes, like, I'm a project manager by heart, right? I've been doing all these different things in politics and all this stuff, and it's like, when I say a deadline, let's do it, let's make it happen. But I had to learn that you can't rush science.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, usually I'm like, you can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking to these researchers and are like, hey, like, we need to make sure that this is accessible for everyone. We need to meet people where we are. And if it takes us a few more hours to make sure that this question is right, we're going to do that. Yeah. And it's that level of respect of the instrument, the user experience, the respondent, because, you know, we may not be in official white lab coats with clipboards, but when a person takes a survey, they are a respondent to a scientific study. And for us, that is such a gift that the respondents gives to us, that we want to make sure that the survey taking experience is as wonderful as possible, given the fact that it takes about an hour to take.
That's a long survey. It's
a long survey, okay, but it does take about an hour to take. It could take less, but it's definitely something that's important, and it's also something we're not going to lie about.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Let's be transparent about it.
We're very transparent about it. So when the messaging comes out, it's like, hey, get cozy. Yeah. You get a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, whatever you need. Sit down in your cozy chair,
curl up in a blanket. Yeah, exactly. With your tablet.
Take your survey, right? And you know, it's something that we definitely took a lot of care. Because these sections get heavy. Yeah. You know, because we ask about ideation. Oh, speaking of things we added resiliency questions in mental health.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We started asking about joy. We wanted people to start sharing their positive experiences being trans, because a lot of these studies tend to be so freaking depressing, right? Yeah. It's because the trans story in itself has become that, but it doesn't need to be. Because one of the questions that I'm kind of excited about is the fact that we are going to be asking a question about, since you've come out as a trans person, I'm paraphrasing, this isn't exactly what it is, don't get me. But if you have come out as a trans person, is your quality of life better or worse? Right? And we have a scale there. And, you know, when's the last time you've been asked that question?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question.
Exactly. Right. And for us, we're just like, why aren't we asking this question? Because almost every trans person I know that's out and thriving and doing their thing are happier people than I've met. And more cis people. I don't know cis people as happy as trans people sometimes. Like, I don't know them. I know plenty. No, but in all honesty, like, when I see a trans person thriving, when I see a trans person just doing their thing, going out in public and being who they are, and just like being able to just do that, that's joy. That's freedom. That's what it's like to be a human. And that's, for me, to be able to ask that question so we can track that over time. Yeah. Because we're going to do another survey 5 to 7 years from now. We're going to ask that question again. Is it gotten better for trans folks, or is it gotten worse? And that level of information is going to be so critical in the future. Are we doing the right things? Yeah. Are there people in certain states suffering more than others? Right? Yeah. You know, and fortunately, in some areas, it is that way. But anyways, I've droned on for a long time.
No, this is wonderful. I really appreciate you bringing up the different state surveys as well, because I think that's something I know in the work that I've done has been super helpful around talking about what the experiences are for trans people in Arizona and what we are seeing for the specific the silos of the different questions that were asked. But that actually makes me wonder about, can you share a little bit around what was learned from the 2015 survey?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me pull out my
your notes.
Handy notebook here, the last survey results.
Oh, look at this.
Yes.
Big old packet.
I know. It's all worn out because I'm always like just referencing this thing. Read it back, and you've read it a couple of times too, haven't you?
Yes. It's available online, isn't it?
Yes. So if you want to see the US Trans Survey results for 2015, just go to ustranssurvey.org. ustranssurvey.org, and you can see the results. You can see this exact PDF of what I'm holding in my hand, and you can do your own searches throughout the report. It's quite thick, but it's worth it. It is worth a read if you're really interested, especially if you're like in a specific work. Like let's say you're an activist for people who want to help solve the houseless problem with humans. Like we have answers and questions on what it looks like for trans folks, right? Like this that's why we call it a demographic survey, and that's why it is so long. It's not so long. I say it like it's a droning paper, but it's just longer because we have to ask so much because nobody asks us these questions.
Absolutely.
And when we were thinking about cutting this survey down to make it better for length, we didn't have a heart to cut anything. Like, I was like, oh, who's going to be the one that said we're cutting out, this
experience in
healthcare?
schools.
This experience in school, or who's going to be the one that cuts out, like, what is school uniforms, or how is that working out, or things like that, right? Like, that's the stuff that you want to know about. And so yes. So some of the big numbers that we really gleaned was the fact that 1 in 4 respondents. Now, this, mind you, it's 28,000 folks that took this. So 1 in 4 respondents, 25%, actually experienced a problem in the past year with their insurance related to being trans, such as being denied coverage for care related for gender transition, or being denied coverage for routine care because they were transgender. And that's just health insurance, right? That's not even just talking about the people who just don't even have access to health insurance either, right? So it's gotten a little bit better. You have states in Colorado, California that are forcing insurance providers to start providing that. Medicare providing things in that nature. So it is getting better, and I want to see if this number actually drops or increases, because it could be increasing and we could be dealing with a lot of different other questions that they could bring up. For example, we're seeing a massive bottleneck in proficient surgeons and endocrinologists, right? So we don't know if there's people waiting in lines in areas that are like, hey, I've been waiting for a long time. So it's going to be really interesting data to ask this question again, which we are going to be. So more than half, 55% of those who sought coverage for trans-related surgery in the past year were denied, and 25% of those who sought coverage for hormone in the past year were denied, which is scary. Right? Like 25% of health insurance companies were denying hormone-related care, and about 25% who sought just translated surgery, 55% were denied. And this also, this includes top surgery, bottom surgeries, facial feminization surgeries, and things of that nature, right? And right now with insurance, like, it's hard to get hair removal. So, one of the questions we're also asking is access to fertility as well. Fertility treatments. We need to ask if people getting access to that? Are they getting insurance for that? Are providers even talking?
Because that's the big thing. Like, are providers even talking to you about what your options are for fertility?
Yeah, absolutely. And then 1/3, which is, this one's the one that's kind of bugs me a lot too, is 1/3 of those folks who saw a healthcare provider in the past year reported at least having one negative experience for being trans. So this could be anything from verbal, assault, physically, sexually assaulted, any other type of discrimination and assault. 1/3 of folks going to see their doctor in the last year, so that was in 2014 when the survey was taken, were experiencing some form of transphobia in some way, some type of harassment just for being trans. And then in the past year, 23% of the respondents did not even see a doctor because they were the fear of being mistreated as a trans person. And 33% did not see a doctor when needed because they could not afford it. So you have 23% of people saying, I'm afraid to go because I'm going to get discriminated against by the doctor without even giving it a shot because it's so scary. And then 1/3 saying, it's just,
we can't, it's too much.
It's just too much. Yeah, absolutely.
It's, I think for health providers who might be listening, there can sometimes be this feeling of, well, what do I do? What can I do? And so maybe this is a good opportunity for us to pivot a little bit around, like, how can health providers support the US Trans Survey and get involved and engage our community for this survey.
Absolutely. And since the US Trans Survey is a scientific study, the best way to do it is actually to contact us at US Trans Survey at transequality.org. That will allow us to reach out to you personally. And you can also, I'm just going to go ahead and call them out, Alex, ALEX, at Trans Equality. So that's, it's A Rosario. Del Rosario. We could put those links.
Yeah.
Okay. You can contact them. They are our outreach coordinator, and we actually have a guide for healthcare providers to actually give information to the people that they're serving. So one of the things, as you know, since medical providers probably know about IRBs and studies, so this is an institutional review board process. We're going through UCLA. All the materials that will be given to you from our organization. You can also find our links at ustranssurvey.org. You can find us on our about pages. You can contact us, and we will give you access to the links. That will be the tweets, all the different posters. We even have a postcard, and in the folder that you find on the website, you can also request, and we will mail you palm cards. So that have a QR code, so you can put it at your reception desk. So then you can actually have people pick up and take the survey, because taking the survey is the most important part. And that's the best way you can support, is to get people to take the survey or pledge to take the survey at this moment at ustranssurvey.org. When it comes to your own personal learning, make sure you're always using standard of care, WPATH, all of those type of things, and making sure that you are constantly educating yourself, as this is a growing field and more people are understanding trans healthcare in a way that I never thought was even possible, not even a year ago. I'm just seeing the advancements in our healthcare system happen for trans folks, and it's just like so inspiring to see. But yet we don't have just surgeons and doctors going in to the field, right? And we need more endocrinologists, and since you're healthcare providers, I'm sure you know this. I'm speaking to the choir at this point, but the choir still got to practice. I like to say that. So one of the things that's really critical is that we don't have a medical governing board for trans medicine. And you have one for cardiology, you have one for urology, you have all these different governing boards, right, for surgery, right, as well. So you need a governing board for the gender affirming surgeries, and we need to have a medical health board for trans healthcare. Because we're completely leaving an entire section of medicine off to the side because people are afraid. It's very similar to Roe v. Wade. When Roe v. Wade became the law of the land, unfortunately not as much anymore, doctors had to go and learn how to do these procedures. They had to go and do that, and there was a shortage. Right? And right now, we are at a shortage of healthcare providers providing medicine. And then you also have the extended threat of being a gender-affirming care clinician now is actually a scary time to be, when you have people like Libs of TikTok with Chaya Rychek actually targeting. And those, it's just so horrific. And so just know that if you're a healthcare provider that provides trans healthcare, we stand with you, and we know how brave you are for even being able to be openly supporting us, because I don't think that's said enough. I don't think trans people think they're providers enough, because just the medicine that keeps me alive is critical to my health. And my doctor is providing something that is seen as an abomination to an entire quarter of this country. And it's like, it's hard to think. And so I have great respect for healthcare providers. My sister's an RN. So it's definitely in the family, where it's like, it's something that I have incredible respect for in the medical health profession. And that's why for me, it takes such great reverence when I work on the survey, because I know a lot of you are going to be using the data from this project.
100%.
to be using this as your support tool, and that's what we want to do. We want to support. This is what this is. It's something we give. Right? And that's so. Just make sure that people who you provide care to has access and knows about the survey. That's the biggest help that you could have. It's coming out mid-October, and the rollout will be starting September 12th. And what I mean by that is that you're going to be seeing all the fanfare from all the organizations. So when you see it, share it, because we want to get as many people involved as possible with this project, because the US Trans Survey, I like to think it will save lives. And because I put a lot of my own self into this, because I know how important it is, and many sleepless nights working on this project just to make sure that we get it out for the people this year, so we can actually get the data analyzed and get a report mid next year. That's the plan.
That's so exciting.
That's the plan.
And I know you and I were talking before this interview, and again, just thank you so much to you and to everyone who's working on this, because it is a heavy lift to get this completed. And I think it's important for us to recognize how much of ourselves go into the work that we do, because this is impacting our lives as well. So it's not just going to work in the morning. I have to prepare myself for the emotional labor of doing this work every single day. I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. And the survey is only going to be live for 4 weeks.
4 weeks is what we're saying. Only unforeseen circumstances would make it go longer, so we're not going to say that. Yes, it's going to be open for 4 weeks, and I know it's a short period. I'll give you a quick explanation why that is. This isn't something we just picked out of a hat. This allows us to have benchmarking to other national surveys that monitor things like mental health, income, and those numbers that I usually do every month. So we'll be able to take that snapshot of that month and say, okay, this is what it was like for cis people, or average, just all Americans generally
during that
time, and then you can compare what did we get during that same month.
Gotcha.
Right, so then we can actually say, okay, it's actually like 20% worse or better, right? Depending on what angle that goes in. So that's kind of what we are able to do, and that's why it's 4 weeks. That's why we have a pledge. So take the pledge, and you will get an email, and you'll probably get a text, and maybe even a call, depending on where you are. So pledge to take the survey. We won't let you forget.
And encourage your patients and clients to take the survey as well. And I am so grateful that you all have palm cards, because I think one of the things that happens sometimes in a well-meaning way is that folks are approached because the providers know that they are trans, or they've come out to the provider as trans. But I assure you that you also have trans and non-binary people that you are seeing as patients and clients who likely have not come out to you.
Absolutely.
So palm cards are a great way to give them that information instead of just targeting who you know is trans or non-binary.
Right, and that's one thing about the US Trans Survey. I'll just go ahead and do the eligibility. So the eligibility to take the US Trans Survey is you have to be 16 or above, and you have to reside in the United States or its territories, and be trans or non-binary, or will be soon, or gender non-conforming in that way. Right, so does that make sense? So anybody who's not cis takes the US Trans Survey. So when and residing in the United States, and it's just really, really critical. And we want to make sure that it is a safe space, and we have authenticator systems so people will be able to come in and out of the survey with freedom.
Nice.
So that way they don't, like, brother walks in the room, click on, and we don't brand the US Trans Survey all over the survey when people are taking it either, because we want to make sure that people are like, somebody looks over your shoulder, they don't see that you're taking the trans thing. You're just the USDS with that. Right.
That's smart.
So
that's really smart.
And those are the type of steps that we took. Right. No cookies are being saved. We just made this so safe when it comes to anonymity and making sure people are not in danger by releasing these very critical stories, because that's what these surveys are. They're stories. There's quantitative. That's all.
Absolutely.
They're quantitative stories, and it's important for us to be able to do that. And I don't really I don't talk about this enough, but I will do it now. At the end of the survey, you get an opportunity to share your own personal story about a personal topic or an issue in your life that you may have experienced. So let's say you had a really bad experience at the DMV and you want to tell us about it. We want to hear about it, right? Like, we want to hear those personalized stories, and we're keeping that database, and that is separate from the survey, but it's after you leave the survey and then you can identify yourself and everything's already all submitted. You don't have to talk about it anymore. But like the story collection page, we're really excited about doing too, because it's going to allow people to like say, because taking the survey is like, man, I asked her a lot of questions about my family. Let me tell you about my sister, right? Yeah. Like we want those stories, and we also are asking them in the positive and the negative. So we're not just asking for sad stories. Yeah. We're also asking for euphoric stories, right? Like that's what we got to do as a community, because we are so vibrant, and it is. I look at the trans community. We are a tapestry of just beautiful humans that add a lot of color to life. And so when we're able to get that joy and see that color in its most vibrant colors, like that's what it's all about. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah. And I try to take the joy angle, the positive angle of things, because I like to say, hey, more people are coming out and more people are being accepted more than ever in human history. And that's a big win. Yeah. That's a huge win. And we're under attack right now, but we are coming through. And I think that's what makes us so powerful, is our perseverance and our ability to continue to share our lives freely, openly, safely. That allows us to be the movement that we are. Yeah. And that's what keeps me going.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Well, I want to just move into the last couple questions I have for you. These are some quick questions. They aren't related to the trans survey, but I think it's a good segue. You're talking about joy. I'm just curious, what brings you joy?
Oh man, my gosh, there's so many things that bring me joy. It's such a hard question now, before, because there's so many things that make me happy. Versus before, I was like, what does make me happy? Now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I could say, like learning the flu. I do this work for a living, like, with the trans rights stuff. That brings me real joy. And, I will tell you what not only gives me joy, but inspiration. So there is this little girl, and she's in Southern California. And I met her, and I was the first trans person she ever met. And I actually met her because a girl that I actually dated pre-transition, it was her niece. And so her sister, so the little girl's mother, wanted to understand why her daughter was wearing princess dresses and all of this stuff and sparklies and all this stuff, and wanted to understand, what does that mean? So we had brunch, and she was wearing this cute little headband, and she was wearing a cute little pink dress. I think it was a pink dress. It was a cute dress. And I sat down, and I was just wearing this typical little brunch dress, whatever. And we sat down, and I was talking to her mother, and I was like, has she ever met a trans person before? And she was like, no. I'm like, really? No, never. Like, in my own head, I even had to break my own internal biases, right? Of like how the media always says that trans people only are trans if they see other trans people, right? Like, even in my own head, I was like thinking, somebody had to like give this girl the courage to be herself, right? Like, I was like thinking about that, right? But like, no, she was herself authentically on her own. Nobody in her family except for her mother said that she was able to be who she was. Wow. And her aunt. And I was like, can I tell her? And I remember this moment, still gets me emotional. And I said, hey, I'm just like you. When I was born, the doctors thought I was a boy. And she was like, what? Wait, what? Really? Like, it was like this lit up, and she's like, that's so cool. Like, that's what she said, actually. That's so cool. Like that. And it was just like, and I was just like, she was like, oh my gosh. And then she just like lit up as this little sparkler, right? And just like was chit-chatting the whole time. She was 5 years old. And I, we walked around, and, she was in, we were just smelling the flowers in front of the little restaurant. She had my hand, and she was like, we were smelling the flowers for the restaurant. And that's when she was like, the boys at school call me girl boy. And then she starts telling me about the bullying. Immediately. It was like the second she had an opportunity, she was like, this is what's happening. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I was like, it's okay. I was like, people are going to be mean. People are mean to me. But am I a boy? And I looked, and I said that, and she's like, no. And I'm like, exactly. I'm a girl, right? She's like, yeah. And I was like, you're a girl, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, there you go. That's the only thing that matters. And I remember when she was getting in the car, and her mother was there, and she was like, hey, Mom. And she's like, on her 2 feet, she's like, I'm a girl. And my mom's like, yeah, of course, of course. She's like, no, I'm a girl. And that announcement of like that declaration of like, this is actually who I am, was probably the most joyful, inspirational moment I've ever had, because I was just like, just me just being an adult, knowing that it's possible. To know that you can be happy, to know all of those things.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, and so for me, that's what brings me my it seriously is my heart, my joy, and I consider her a niece now, part of the family at this point, which is super great, and I was able to get her and her aunt here to the DC area to meet with Secretary Becerra at the Health and Human Services for the first time ever for a trans kid roundtable with the Secretary and the Assistant Secretary January Contreras. And then Admiral Levine was in Florida with a video feed head. And first time ever in American history has American executive officials ever met with trans kids.
That's amazing.
And it was Health and Human Services, and she was there at that table, and it was just so unbelievably, like, she was so brave.
Yeah.
To go up there and sit there, And they pulled me up a chair, and they're like, "No, you're Aunt Josie." I'm like, "Yeah." And then she held my hand the whole time. She was like squeezing it the whole time as the whole round table. She was so good and so reverent and happy, just like sitting there, sitting there listening to all the other trans kids' stories. She was one of the youngest. There was a 5-year-old, and then there was a 6-year-old, which was her. Yeah.
I'm really glad that she has folks like you in her life to help support.
And she's my joy.
Yeah.
She is my joy. Like, so she's going to come and visit me probably annually. It's just going to happen. I know her mom's probably like, yeah, it's probably. Yeah.
Well, I think that is a beautiful, joyful story to end on.
Yeah.
I thank you so much, Josie, for being on Ask Miss Jai Live and for sharing about your work and for all of the work that you're doing. I know I'm really excited. Providers who are watching this, please, I'll put the contact information in the comments. Please reach out to the National Center for Transgender Equality to get these palm cards, to get this information. Help us get more data into the USTS so that we can make change in our lives. Absolutely. Because it does make actual change in our lives.
It really does. Real change that actually means something.
Yeah. And thank you again for joining us today. And thank you for taking the time and investing in the health and wellness of trans and non-binary people. And have a wonderful Sunday.
Bye.
And now to end all the broadcasts.